Adam, Prince of Eternia, is just a man, but he becomes He-Man when he puts on the symbolic phallus, picks up the power sword. This phallic signifier, an actual phallic symbol, transforms its bearer from an ordinary person into He-Man, into the most powerful man in the universe, into the man, the one who has the phallus. That is, it produces the phallic figure, the uncastrated lawgiver who retains full jouissance, absolute power, and masculine virility, while castrating all others. What does He-Man scream? He shouts, "I have the power!" That is, I have the phallus. In this opening, Castle Grayskull represents the phallic symbolic order itself, which the symbolic father embodies with his no, name of the father. The power sword, index of the phallus, phallic signifier, signifies Castle Grayskull, symbolic order, universe of meaning. The power sword, phallus, He-Man, bearer of the phallus, phallic figure, super subject, and Castle Grayskull, symbolic order, all stand united against Skeletor and his evil forces. Evil equals jouissance. As Lacan said, jouissance is evil. And yet it is precisely through the gap between Adam and He-Man that we perceive his own castration. It's because Adam lacks that he has to pick up the sword, phallic signifier, and transform into He-Man. Here's how Zizek explains it. Symbolic castration is the price to be paid for the exercise of power. How, precisely? One should begin by conceiving of phallus as a signifier. Which means what? From the traditional rituals of investiture, we know the objects which not only symbolize power, but put the subject who acquires them into the position of effectively exercising power. If a king holds in his hands the scepter and wears the crown, his words will be taken as the words of a king. Such insignia are external, not part of my nature. I don them, I wear them in order to exert power. As such, they castrate me. They introduce a gap between what I immediately am and the function that I exercise, i.e., I am never fully at the level of my function. This is what the infamous symbolic castration means. Not castration as symbolic, as just symbolically enacted, in the sense in which we say that when I am deprived of something, I am symbolically castrated. But the castration which occurs by the very fact of me being caught in the symbolic order, assuming a symbolic mandate. Castration is the very gap between what I immediately am and the symbolic mandate which confirms on me this authority. In this precise sense, far from being the opposite of power, it is synonymous with power. It is that which confirms power on me. And one has to think of the phallus not as the organ which immediately expresses the vital force of my being, my virility, and so on, but precisely as such an insignia, as a mask which I put on in the same way a king or judge puts on his insignia. Phallus is an organ without a body, which I put on, which gets attached to my body, without ever becoming its organic part, namely, forever sticking out as its incoherent, excessive supplement. What about She-Ra being the phallus? She-Ra screams something else. She says, I am She-Ra. That is, I am the phallus, or I be the phallus. In picking up the phallus, sword, falling symbol, Adora goes from a woman into being Shira, a hyper-sexualized object. Her cleavage is now showing. She has on a short dress, and her hair is now enticingly flowing in the wind. The wind never blows through Hymen's hair. Notice that she defines herself in relation to a man, Hymen. I am Adora, Hymen's twin sister. Her status is derived from a man's status. Her power lies in being a sex object, beautiful woman. Beauty is the only phallus a woman can have in the phallic symbolic order, patriarchy, misogyny. The only power is the power to affect man's desire. Also, notice that she gains her power from Castle Grayskull, the phallic masculine symbolic order, and not from some other feminine symbolic order. Even though she lives in a different place, Etheria, a different castle, Crystal Castle, the only castle symbolic order is Castle Grayskull. Shira is a woman, but one occupying the phallic position. There is no feminine ideal to aspire to. That is, there is no feminine counterpart to the primal father. This is why Shira really just copies Hymen. Her opening theme just parallels his. It's not like Shira presents a radical alternative to the masculine ideal, since she is the princess of power. She just occupies it, and that's what was exciting about her. Shira actually shows that there is no alternative image of power for a woman. Phallic women are also modeled on the primal father. Shira occupies the same symbolic position and phantasmatic ideal as Hymen. Shira, like Hymen, wants to have the phallus, magical power. For a woman to have power in patriarchal society, she must go with the masculine model. She copies Hymen. She brandishes the sword, phallic symbol, and holds it up. And this is how she undergoes a symbolic transformation, which bestows on her a position of power. She becomes the bearer of the phallus. Here's the trick. It's very subtle, but we must see that the actual phallic signifier is Shira's sexualized appearance. The sword is not the actual phallic signifier in this case. It's Shira herself, sexualizing herself as a beautiful object. The apparent message of that opening is this. Yes, in our modern times, a woman can also have the phallus. See? Look! Shira gains phallic power through holding up the sword, wielding the phallic signifier, just like Hymen. But not so fast. The real message is this. All this talk of the woman having phallic power is a bluff, since what still gives her power is being beautiful, being a sexualized object. 80s and 90s pop culture, in particular, is filled with this contradictory message concerning a woman's relation to the phallus. You too can have the phallus. But not really. Now show us some skin. This is what the semiotics actually whisper to us. The sword is there only to disguise, to serve as misdirection for the fact that Shira herself is the phallus. She gets her power by putting on a sexy little dress, showing her cleavage and having the wind seductively blow through her hair, like a Playboy model. And the biggest indicator of all this is that she says, I am Shira. She doesn't say, like Hymen, that she has the power. No, she is the power. We know this precisely because of how this opening is in dialogue with humans. They must be interpreted side by side. The very moment Shira ought to declare that she has the power, she instead makes an ontological substantial declaration about herself. To say I am Shira is to say I am the power, Phallus. The strong symmetry, the blatant isomorphism between the two opening themes only make the points of their dissymmetry all the more noticeable to someone paying attention. Is this not what a trophy wife does? A trophy wife is a pretty object that indicates that her husband is not just a man, but the man. Think about it. A man cannot be a trophy husband, though a man can be a trophy wife. To be a trophy wife is to reduce yourself to the substantial mode of being an object. That is, you sacrifice your subjectivity. Trophy wives don't have meaningful options, opinions, individualistic passions, thoughts, desires, goals, aspirations. The trophy wife is just very beautiful and sexy. Reducing herself to her beauty is how she comes to be the phallus. She also embodies her husband's phallic power insofar as he has castrated all other men from enjoying her. She becomes the signifier, index, that indicates that he has the substantial phallus, reservoir of power. She becomes the symbolic phallus itself and signifies, indicates his power. For the woman to have the phallus, she has to be the phallus for a man. She has the phallus in the simulatory sense, insofar as her marriage means that she can wield whatever actual power the husband has. She has the phallus so long as she is the phallus, being the beautiful object that indicates his exceptional substance. The man has the phallus because he remains an active agent, insofar as he lays down the law, restricts the enjoyment of others, imposes his will on others, etc. He has the phallus while remaining a subject. This is what makes him the super subject. The woman must be a beautiful object to have power within the structures of our patriarchal symbolic order. Of course, this is only true within the confines of patriarchy, or, in Judith Butler's terms, the heteronormative matrix of intelligibility. Lacan's concept of the phallus is not a normative one. He's not merely celebrating it and the symbolic order it establishes. In fact, he's critiquing it by showing how arbitrary it really is. Nobody actually has or is the phallus. Generally speaking, this makes so much sense out of our social space and how the sexes relate to each other in it. We need this concept in order to describe the workings of the world as it actually is and has been. This is the difference between having the phallus and being the phallus. Both are simulations. The man simulates being a super subject, and the woman simulates being an object. In truth, both of them are just subjects of lack. Masculinity is the simulation of substantial subjectivity, subjectivity with no lack. And phallic femininity is a simulation as well, since it makes a subject seem to be reducible to an object. Both are bullshit. Both are versions of the Sartrean bad faith. In truth, all of us are desiring subjects of lack. Whereas masculinity, having the phallus, and the objectified femininity, being the phallus, it desires, are always phallic. Authentic femininity, there is no phallus, is never phallic. It fully embraces human subjectivity in all its lack, negativity, vulnerability, incompleteness, castration, and desire. In both cases, having and being the phallus, the real feminine truth of all of our subjectivities, is covered over. This is why femininity, true femininity, is actually true subjectivity. Phallic identity simulates a substantial subjectivity, S, but femininity proper affirms true subjectivity in all its lack, $. The woman is the human. McGowan nailed it in his video on the phallus when he said, "The position of femininity is the position attached to recognition of lack beneath, what's not beneath. Whereas masculinity is built upon the deception that there is some secure substance beneath." So, masculinity is a belief in the substance of one's identity, whereas femininity is a belief in one's subjectivity. You might say, femininity is the choice of absence rather than presence, whereas masculinity is an investment in the lie of presence. So, femininity is the point of absence within the symbolic structure. True femininity does not say, I have the power or I am the power, but instead, I do not have the power and I am not the power, since there is no power to have or to be. This is freedom. The phallus is a fallacy. Is not negative, lacking subjectivity what Descartes couldn't bring himself to accept? In Meditations on First Philosophy, Descartes arrives at pure subjectivity, the negative itself, the subjective void. In the second meditation, he calls this lack the cogito. However, he immediately goes on to substantialize this subjective negativity. It's as if he, as a man, could not bring himself to embrace the lack at the core of his being, that is, his feminine truth. Instead, he covers over this lack by turning the cogito into a thinking substance, or a substantial identity, res cogitans. This insistence on substantializing his self is the masculine maneuver par excellence. Descartes turns thought itself into the phallic signifier. I think, therefore I am. The phallus. I think means symbolic phallus, and I am means the substantial phallus. Lacan and Zizek, however, both defend Descartes and credit him with the discovery of the pure subject, negative subjectivity, the desiring and lacking subject. But both of them are aware that he corrupts his own discovery by reifying it. I now want to spend some time providing more examples of the various ways in which the phallus affects men and women. Consider how the damsel in distress is a basic phallic fantasy. The woman is in state of radical lack, whereas the man is overflowing with a surplus of being, ontological plenitude. He has so much power, being, presence, that he can fill in the lack in the woman. He is not only complete, he is ultra complete, due to his surplus power. This means that he has power, fullness, to spare. This fantasy, therefore, is centered around the phallus, regardless of whether it is a man or a woman who's fantasizing it. If a man is having this fantasy, then he desires to have the phallus in order to satisfy the woman's desire. If the woman is fantasizing this scenario, then she wants to be the damsel in distress, because saving her, having her, is what the man desires. Lacan pointed out how a fantasy always is an answer to the question, que voi? That is, what do you want from me? In Zizek words, quote, one should always bear in mind that the desire realized, staged, in fantasy is not the subject's own, but the other's desire. Fantasy, phantasmatic formation, is an answer to the enigma of que voi. You're saying this, but what do you really mean by saying it? Which establishes the subject's primordial, constitutive position. The original question of desire is not directly, what do I want? But, what do others want from me? What do they see in me? What am I to others? A small child is embedded in a complex network of relations. He serves as a kind of catalyst and battlefield for the desires of those around him. His father, mother, brothers and sisters, and so on, fight their battles around him. The mother sending a message to the father through her care for the son. While he is well aware of this role, the child cannot fathom what object precisely he is to others, what the exact nature of the games they are playing with him is. And fantasy provides an answer to this enigma. At its most fundamental, fantasy tells me what I am to my others. End of quote. Here's another instance of the phallus at play in fantasy. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, is a phallic signifier. What's so phantasmatically satisfying at the end of Thor Ragnarok is that Thor realizes that he actually has the power in and of himself. His hammer, phallic signifier, was destroyed at the start of the film by his evil sister. Thor gets his revenge on this castrating woman by realizing that the substantial phallus has been in him all along. And, of course, Thor wants to be the phallic figure so as to satisfy the other. Save the people of Asgard. This is the ultimate masculine fantasy. Possession of the substantial phallus without the symbolic phallus. Thor Ragnarok actually serves as the ultimate masculine fantasy, precisely because Thor ends up being identical to the phallus, power. One could say that Thor has unresolved castration issues. One reason this is such a strong fantasy with men is how it makes the power, phallus, inseparable from the man. It's impossible to lose this power if it's actually inside you and not reliant upon the mediation of the phallic signifier. Perhaps the single greatest example of losing the phallus, castration, is of course found in the biblical story of Samson. In this case, Samson's hair is the phallic signifier that indicates the substantial phallus, the superhuman strength God has given him. However, the power is actually in the hair itself, just like the cop's actual power is in the badge, uniform. For Samson to lose his hair is for him to lose his God's phallic power. Delilah, the castrating woman, seduces Samson into revealing the source of his power, and then betrays him by letting his enemies cut his hair. Quote. And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words, and urged him, so that his soul was vexed unto death, that he told her all his heart, and said unto her, There hath not come a razor upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak, and be like another man. And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, Come up this once, for he hath showed me all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came up unto her, and brought money in their hand. And she made him sleep upon her knees. And she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. End of quote. This image of the seductress that brings about a man's castration is a nightmarish figure to many men. I think this is because of how the image itself reveals that they are already lacking. If you can lose your power, then you don't really have it in the fullest sense of the word. Another example from the MCU is Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet. The actual phallic power, substantial phallus, is in the Infinity Stones, in the Infinity Gauntlet. The 6 stones each have their own power, but to be united, they must be anchored by something else. The power really lies in how the gauntlet, phallic signifier, quills the stones, like the point decapiton. The bearer, qua person, does not immediately possess the power. He or she only has it so long as they actually bear the phallus. The Infinity Gauntlet actually does contain what we would call the real phallus, the substantial power to do anything you want. However, the power, again, is in the gauntlet itself, and not in Thanos. The reason why it's so great to see Iron Man trick Thanos and steal the Infinity Stones from him is because there is an immediate loss of phallic power. Iron Man forces Thanos to face his lack, his fundamental castration. The Tale of Two Phalluses. On an early episode of The Big Bang Theory, there is a battle between 2 phallic signifiers. At Penny's Halloween party, Leonard gets into a confrontation with Kurt, Penny's muscle-bound boyfriend. The boyfriend tries to castrate Leonard, expose his lack, through typical tough guy bullshit, physical intimidation. Leonard, however, responds by attempting to castrate the other guy by showing his lack, revealing how stupid and caveman-like he is. For the boyfriend, the phallic signifier is his physical strength, and for Leonard, the phallic signifier is his intelligence. The 2 phallic signifiers indicate 2 variations on the substantial phallus. The former indicates the power to master the natural environment, while the latter indicates power over the cultural one. And this is a classic trope. We've seen this in Saved by the Bell with Screech and in The Revenge of the Nerds. Men desire the phallus only because women desire it. Desire is the desire of the other. Penny desires the phallus, so the 2 guys fight over who truly has it. Typical male bonding in its truest form is when men enter into an agreement to share their lacks with one another, while promising to simulate their absence when in the presence of other people. I lack, and you know what I lack. You lack, and I know what you lack. We don't have to pretend to be the man when we are together. We can let the truth of our lacks show. But here's the catch. We will both go to great lengths to conceal each other's lack when in the presence of other people. This is the essential function of a wingman. A guy's best friend is the one who knows of his lack and actively helps him cover it in the eyes of other people, especially women. They both aid in the simulation of the other's fallacy with the full knowledge of its absence. True male bonding doesn't occur simply through helping to simulate the other's fallacy. No, there must be a confession of lack involved. Men are only ever true friends when they can trust each other with the secret of their lack. There is a symbolic exchange, Baudrillard, of an empty gesture, Zizek. That is, they give each other the gifts of their own lacks, nothingnesses. Because both men acknowledge each other's lack, they move outside of the imaginary dynamic of mirroring that occurs between egos. They embrace the real lack in the other. Yet, they become guilty of a collusion insofar as they simulate each other's phallic being in front of other people. This collusion makes them both guilty, and this shared crime seals the bond. This collaborative simulation, this double deception, forges the bond of their friendship. Mutual recognition via shared transgression.